The recipes, views, and opinions expressed in this channel are solely those of the speaker. They do not reflect, collaborate, or substitute the views and opinions of a medical health professional. Please consult a professional with any dietary concerns and inquiries prior to trying the recipes. Welcome to the channel.
I'm cooking in Namia. I'm cooking in Namia.
Hi guys, thank you for clicking on this video to get my bomb diggity baked falafel balls. If you are new to this channel, welcome. If you are returning, you have arrived. The goal of this channel is to provide you with foods that are nutritious, healthy, and satisfying without breaking your calorie banks or sacrificing on flavor. This dish that you're about to watch is high in fiber, iron, potassium, good fats, calcium, vitamins A's and C's. Now I'm about to make a very bold declaration here. This is my best falafel ever. Now I'm not saying that Mediterranean falafels are not the glory of falafels. There is nothing that beats an original falafel, but like everything else, I had to solve a problem, and one of those was fat content. The other, sadly, is my digestive issues. So I had embarked on trying baked falafel recipes that are being provided on the internet, and for some reason the idea of consuming a diet related item does not seem palatable, and that aspect does not seem to be a priority. So since taste is a must-have in every dish, let's jump into this dish and find out what a great baked falafel should taste like. And of course, stay tuned because I do have the old wisdom spice coming up here shortly. So to start you off, you will need to soak about a cup of chickpeas the night before. If I am doing chickpeas, lima beans, kidney beans, one of the big beans, I will do an overnight soak. That way it can get hydrated and ready for me the next day. The next day, as you can see, it's all plumped up, ready to go. Make sure you're washing out any of that gunk that comes with it soaking and bringing itself back up until it's absolutely clean. Then grab a cooking pot, and into that cooking pot put your chickpeas and about 6 cups of water. And if you are watching your sodium intake, I usually do watch mine. So I usually add about a teaspoon of sea salt or Himalayan salt if you have that available. Those are basically the types of salts I use, but any salt will work. And we're going to put that on top of the stove, and we're going to be boiling that at medium heat. Now, as you're going through the process, you may want to check on your beans. So there is this white film that forms at the top of the boiled beans, and I usually skim that out. Sometimes I'll forget, and if you do forget, do not worry. It does not hurt the dish. It just helps with making it much more or less how do we put it, too infused with gunk, so to speak. I call it gunk because it's going to make your dish be much more thicker and much more grainier in taste. So skim that off, and then let it continue to boil. Of course, make sure you're covering it. And once it has boiled until all the water is gone and you're kind of hearing that little sizzling sound, this is the moment when you are going to go ahead and turn off your heat, and we're going to wait for this to cool down. So while that is cooling down, let us go ahead and start talking about the old spice. That is my all-time favorite heating agent, and that is habanero. If you know anything about these dishes that you will be seeing on my channel, habanero is a must. Now, habanero comes from the family of capsaicums. These are your green bell peppers, your jalapenos, your hot chili peppers. So that family. And jalapeno is known for regulating cholesterol levels and reducing blood pressure. if you need a weight loss agent, putting some heat in your meals is actually a good idea, because the heat from something like habanero makes you feel fuller faster. And then it is also known to prevent things like cancer due to the micronutrients that it embodies. So with everything that I do, I tend to try and find out where things come from. So habanero hails from Cuba, or Cuba, at a place called La Habana, or also known as Havana. If you have never heard of Cuba or Havana, you may want to do some Googling to figure that one out. So habanero tended to be one of those spices that were heavily traded and discovered in Cuba. So how old are the spices? Because I say it's old wisdom. So it is dated to be about 800 to 1500 years old. And as you know, old wisdom never fails. It is time tested and true. It was discovered at a time when agriculture was coming into life and coming into place, and this was around the time when glacial levels and the flooding that had taken place all around the world were coming down, and the earth was coming back to life. So as the water was dissipating, landform was creating, agriculture came into place. This is also around the time when the Europeans' diet changed and played a very big role in how their DNA evolved and how their genetics shifted with the introduction of agriculture. It's a very interesting read. If you have the time, if you are curious, go read about that. You'll find out some interesting tidbits here and there. But let's go back into the spice itself. So from Cuba, habanero spread to Peru, Central and then South America, and then down to the Caribbean. And then through maritime travels, it was brought to Portugal, then spread to Africa, and then after that, it went all over the world. So we cannot be speaking about hot peppers without talking about the Scoville heat chart. If you do not know what that is, go ahead and pull it up. It's on Google. Scoville is SCO, V as in Victor, I, L as in Leonard, L as in Leonard, E as in elephant. Now, habanero ranks at about 200,000 to 300,000 Scoville units, but it is nowhere as hot as the hottest pepper when it comes to heat. There is a pepper that is actually 15 million units. Now, habanero is hot to me, right? So for me to be burning at a habanero level of 200,000 to 350K, I cannot imagine what a monster of a 15 million monster unit would be. That is like hell in your mouth, if I can equate it to hell. I've never been to hell, but I can equate it to that, I guess. And to give you an idea of how weak my heat game is. So most people from the islands and West Africa tend to eat something called Scotch bonnet peppers. And Scotch bonnet peppers, their hit levels are about 445,000 units, right? So I'm ranking right below them. They're playing on another scale. I'm not on that scale, but mine is hot. If you compare it to like a jalapeno is like 2,500 to 8,000 Scoville units. So I would not sit around and kind of underplay habanero. It's not the kiddie playground compared to heat, but it's definitely one of those that is definitely up there. So if you cannot take a habanero, I would not recommend going. Sorry, if you cannot take a jalapeno, I apologize. I would not recommend trying a habanero. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my old spice of the day. So let's get back to our dish. So at this point, our peas have calmed down in heat. Basically, they've cooled down. So we're going to start pulling out our food processor. The first thing we're going to do is put them into a food processor, and we're going to make it into a crumbly level into the food processor. So you're not going to be blending this until it's completely out, like mushy or fine. It's just a crumble. And then my secret agent is cashews. I use cashews to up dishes. I do not know what it is about cashews, but it changes how a dish works. So go ahead and add that into your food processor after you've crumbled your chickpeas, and also crumble, or at least get it as fine as you can. It does not matter with the cashews. Go ahead and blend that out. Mix it into the chickpeas so that you can have a flour kind of consistency with it. The next is our vegetable agents. So we will be needing an onion, some garlic, and some cilantro. And we're going to go ahead and put that into a blender, into our food processor as well, because we're going to mince it out. I do not like having to taste it as a single component. I would much rather have it infused into my falafel, so I usually do food processing rather than actually chopping that. Once you have that done, we're going to go ahead and get a pot and cook this. Now typically you would mix the rawness of it into the into your flour mix. I'm still stuck on habanero. Wow. Love that spice, I can tell you that. But definitely mix that, they would mix that rawness into the falafel, but I discovered if you cook it a little bit, it actually does help. So grab a cooking pot, a separate cooking pot, and into that we're going to put some butter. And while I use Kerrygold, which is an organic butter, it doesn't really matter what kind of butter it is. And if you do not want to use butter and you're an all vegetarian person, go ahead and use some olive oil. That works just fine. Make sure your heat is not that high, so mine is at about medium heat to low. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my minced cilantro, onions, and garlic. So while that has been added, then I'm going to go ahead and start adding in spices. So after I've cooked that for a little bit, and I'm starting to see my onions have become a little bit translucent because I'm watching for the onions and the garlic to cook properly, then that's when I will start pulling in my spices. So the first spice that goes in is my king, one of my 3 kings, which is turmeric. Next, ginger, my second 3 king. And last but not least is cumin. And I'll be talking about ginger and cumin in one of our videos that are to come. But these are the 3 spices that I usually add into my base mix for the falafel. We're going to go ahead and cook that out. And while we're cooking that out, the idea is to cook the earthiness out of the spices as much as possible. Once again, most people go ahead and just add that into the falafel. I really don't like that. I would like to kind of maintain that chickpea and buttery element to it. And then we're going to go ahead and add in our crumble. So this is the chickpeas and the cashews. Once that has been added in, we're going to mix that for a little bit with a bit of water. And the idea is to try and get it into a moldy type situation. But before that, of course, we have to add the habanero. This is absolutely optional. If you want to use cayenne pepper, paprika, or just hot chilies, you can do that. You don't have to do this option. So we're just going to go ahead and add a bit of the habanero to it. And then the other thing I do add is onion powder. So onion powder kind of brings out that onion flavor to it as much as possible. So go ahead and add that in. And let's go ahead and mix this. Make sure everything is blended as best as we can. And of course, you are doing this on low heat. Make sure your heat is not burning up everything that's going on. And as it's starting to form into like a dough type consistency, a bit like what you might call mashed potato-y type consistency, so some rugged mashed potatoes, Now you're going to go ahead and add some water, and the water helps with clumping things together so that it does not crumble when it goes through the baking process, because baking is going to dry it out. You don't want to add a lot of water, so as you can see, I'm using a tablespoon to be adding water into it, and then kind of mixing it and seeing how well it is clasping to itself. And I will continue to do that until everything is pretty much kind of cooked very well. You'll notice that I am kind of scraping the bottom, and that's to avoid the burning of anything that's happening at the bottom. So that's why I use a wooden spoon, or one of those rubber spatulas would be great for this. You do not want to be using a metal item to be doing the scraping process here. So once you have this doughness to it and it starts to stick to itself, now we're going to go ahead and turn off our heat and let that sit until it cools down. So while that is cooling down, we're going to go ahead and preheat our oven. So we're going to be turning on our oven to 375 degrees in order to get this cooked. And the cook time, I believe, is about 30 to 45 minutes. Definitely check the recipe details to find out how long it's going to be, but we're going to be cooking for more than half an hour during this cook time. And once your mix has completely cooled down, and now we're going to start doing the process of forming the balls. You're going to have to get your hands dirty here, so make sure you have some very clean hands, and then keep a bowl of water next to you, because as you are forming the balls, you do not want them sticking to your hands, and you want them kind of sticking together. Plus, it does give that extra hydration while you're actually making the balls. And scoop about 2 spoons into your hand and go ahead and form balls in that form, and place them on your parchment paper. Like I said, the water does help a lot, and don't be afraid to squish the balls so that they can stick together, because we're doing crumbling in this part. Typically when you're frying falafels, they do have a ball form that they use, and they just scoop it and dump it into the hot oil, so it's rapidly cooked and cemented together when it lands into the hot oil. But because we are baking, we have to rely on things like water to cement things together, and then the oils that we have added into it to help keep that together. So once you have formed the balls, we're going to let this sit. And the idea is to let it sit for about 15 to 30 minutes so that it can kind of dry out outside, because I do want to have a crispy type consistency outside it. So let that sit for about 15 to 30 minutes. And then once it has set for 15 to 30 minutes, we're going to grab some olive oil. And typically I drizzle the olive oil, not typically, but I will drizzle the olive oil on each ball. And this is to help with the cooking process, not only outside but also on the inside. And once we have that done, pop that into the oven and let it cook once again for about 30 to 45 minutes. So once it has baked for about the time has ended, you want to open it up. Now you can leave it as it is, or you can do this extra step, which is to get it extra crispy. So I will typically go ahead and turn my oven into broil at a high temperature, and I will set it for about 5 minutes. Now if you want it to be just golden brown and not that dark color, set it for about 2 minutes. It's going to do the same thing, and it will give you some golden brown ones, but because I like that dark crispiness that does come with falafel, I will set mine for about 5 minutes. And after that, this are your bomb diggity falafel balls. You can actually eat this on its own. I usually do. I keep them in the freezer as a snack item, and then when I'm ready to have one, I'll take it out and make it sit on the counter until it has completely thawed out, and then I'll probably pop it in the microwave for about 5 to 10 seconds. You don't need to heat it up that fast, and I'll chomp on it. Can make it into a sandwich. Absolutely great. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our bomb diggity baked falafel balls. Thank you so much for watching the entire video. Please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified when I post new recipes on YouTube. Please be sure to sign up on my website, imcookingwithnamia.com, to get full recipe details. You can also purchase this downloadable recipe card on my website, along with any other of your favorite recipes on my channel. Your support will keep these recipes coming and is greatly appreciated. And I will see you on the next video.